Welcome back to Speaking with Confidence, a podcast that helps you build the soft skills that lead to real results. Communication, storytelling, public speaking, and showing up with confidence in every conversation that counts. I'm Tim Newman, a recovering college professor turned communication coach, and I'm thrilled to guide you on a journey to becoming a powerful communicator. Today's guest is Kenisha Brown-Alexander. Kenisha is a trailblazer in the sports industry, with experience leading major events for organizations like the Miami Dolphins, the Super Bowl Committee, the Orange Bowl Committee, and more. She's a certified life coach, adjunct professor, speaker, and founder of the Brainerd Tomorrow Foundation, which is dedicated to guiding individuals through life's toughest challenges, transforming pain into purpose, fostering resilience, and embracing new beginnings. Through the foundation, her signature program, Game Changers United, supports student athletes in balancing academics, athletics, and their personal life by promoting mental well-being and spiritual growth. Her inspiring journey of resilience and faith uplifts others, reminding them that even in life's darkest moments, a brighter tomorrow is always within reach. Kenisha, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is going to be I'd like to say a fun conversation, but we're going to talk about some serious issues that need talked about. I mean, ultimately, because for the most part, we as a society, brush these things under the rug or just discount them. But before we, really get into some of those issues, I want to talk with you about sports, and then we can get into the important things. From a professional perspective, you and I have a lot in common. We're both student athletic trainers. We both have sport industry experience and operations, both college professors, et cetera. But what have you seen in terms of the communication skills of young professionals over the last few years?
I mean, if I could be transparent.
Please do.
It's lacking, unfortunately. This generation, it's different. That's probably the easiest way that I can put it. Mm-hmm. And that is honestly half the reason why I decided to become an adjunct professor, because especially in the sports industry, not because obviously I can't speak for any others, right. But here, it definitely requires, students to step up, to give it all you got, to show up, to give the grit. They think that it's just all fun and games. And while, yes, it's sports and it's fun, it definitely requires a level of tenacity in order to be successful in this industry. And so communication, for one, is something that I believe lacks. But I make it a point to emphasize that in my classroom. If you ask any of my students, they know with Professor A, it's about the details. It's about, the little things. I tell them all the time, I will pull up their assignment on the board and I tell them, do you see these 4 bullets? If you follow these 4 bullets, I promise you will do well in this class, or you'll do well on this assignment. But they also know that I do that because that is a real life skill and a skill set that they're going to need when they leave this classroom. I'm teaching allied sports science. They don't really need that, but I'm going to teach you through life skills, and I'm going to teach you those interpersonal skills that you're going to need for whatever career that you have. And so, I think that if we all, like persons like you and I and other professors that are out there, are very intentional about the things that are necessary, and they use that in the classroom and utilize that, I think the students will be fine. But it's on them, to step up and want to do this.
It really is. And, what I found over the last few years of my, career in academia was I was spending more time teaching soft skills and communication skills than I was the content. And part of that was because it doesn't really matter what if you can't communicate, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
And, what we do in the sport industry, it's not rocket science. Right. It's not like they're going to be doctors. I mean, if that's different. It's not like they're going to be architects and building bridges and you've got to be able to have good interpersonal relationship skills. You got to be able to talk to people. You have to be able to think critically on your feet.
Yes.
All those types of things. But,
And I tell them all the time, obviously they're young adults, so they're not made to come to class and things like that. And obviously things happen, but I tell them you have to communicate. Like, you should send me an email to let me know. If you're not going to show up to work, when you get out of here, like, you can't just not show up, right?
Right.
You have to communicate that, so just like you said, those interpersonal skills, I'm doing my very best to try to get that ingrained in them in these, 4.5 months, that they at least take that with them when they leave
Yeah.
me, and go out into the rest of this world.
So let's take that just a step further. And you were the manager of the volunteer program for the 2020 Super Bowl in Miami,
Yes.
which what I don't think people understand what an undertaking that actually is, right? And so you're just a manager of one segment of the overall experience of the overall experience, right?
Right.
So give everybody an inside look. What did you actually do? How many volunteers was it? I mean, how many different people are you dealing with? Like, give us a quick overview of what that's like.
Sure. So, I break it down like this. Of course, everybody knows Super Bowl Sunday. Everybody knows that's the big game. That's what we're all here for. But for the city that is hosting the game, there's a week long of events. So they may or may not televise that. You may or may not even hear about it. Everybody knows about Sunday. And so for the host city that is hosting the game, they establish a host committee that is basically the boots on the ground for the NFL, because the league office is in New York. So those guys can't move down to the cities where the game is being held. So they have to rely on the host committee to give them direction, to give them guidance. They don't know the best restaurants. They don't know the best venues to host, all of the different events. So they rely on the host committee to give them some insight and, some directives on, best experience for them. Right. So within all of that, you have the volunteer team. The host committee, let me back up. The host committee is actually a nonprofit organization. While the NFL is a for-profit, the host committee is a nonprofit. Therefore, that is why there's a need for volunteers. And so the volunteers are helping with the host committee events, because there are actually events that are assigned to the host committee. But then there's also roles that are sometimes even paid positions that are available for Super Bowl Sunday. And so as the manager over volunteers, we were not required, but we were tasked with recruiting 10,000 volunteers. And that is, again, because there is Super Bowl Live, which is a free event that the host committee does that runs the full 7 days of Super Bowl week. Then there's the Super Bowl, or now NFL experience, that's usually held at the convention center in that city. And so the NFL asks for volunteers to help support that event. Monday of Super Bowl week is opening night. So that is when the teams are first in town and they're having their media night. And so there's volunteers needed for that. And then, of course, from a hospitality perspective, at the airports, at some of the more popular hotels, there are a need for volunteers, because, again, you've got people coming from everywhere, even international. And so they don't know anything about the city. Perhaps they've never visited there before. So volunteers are the folks that are familiar with the city. They know the best restaurants. They know where to get your nails done. They know where the barbershops are. They can help from a hospitality perspective for the guests who come into town. And so it's a year-long process. We started literally as soon as the former game was over. So for us, it was Atlanta. So as soon as that game was over, we opened up our portal for volunteers to register. They go through a screening process. They go through a background process. They go through an interview, and eventually, we narrow it all the way down. I think our end number was maybe right around 8,300. We didn't quite get 10,000. I think because Miami has held so many Super Bowls that, maybe fatigue. But nevertheless, we lean on corporations to bring. They can do it as a group, if they want to do it as a staff outing. In the sports management world for colleges, there's colleges that will bring a group of students that want to get that learning experience. And so, I would say we had at least 45 universities that would bring a group of students to come down, and they, get the experience of, working the Super Bowl game. So, yes, it was a daunting task, but it's a lot of fun. You meet some great people, and a lot of these folks have remained friends of mine throughout the years. I still, keep up with them today. So I love it. It was good.
Yeah, it's a daunting task to do that. And, again, just because the Super Bowl is over on Sunday at 10:30, 11 o'clock, your job isn't necessarily over yet, because you still have all the wrap up and the cleanup and the this and that and communication with the next city,
Right.
And those types of things. What about the level of communication that has to take place in coordinating, let's just say 8,300 volunteers on top of all of the other committees and all of the other people that are, because that's just one cog in the wheel of that whole event.
Yeah. So it definitely requires some management processes, if you will. So we use a tool called Rosterify, where the volunteers would have like their own portal, if you will. And so on the back end, on our side, from the staff perspective, we go in and we assign them their shifts, and they get the notifications of when their shift is coming. They get all the detailed information as far as parking and meals and all of those things. So it's nearly we were a staff of 3. So it was nearly impossible for us to single-handedly try to communicate without having some sort of automated tool. And so that tool was very helpful for us. Even if we had to send out real-time messages or something changed, we could send that alert and they would get a text message. So communication is definitely necessary. Even for us, though, even though we were the internal team of 3, it wasn't just us. There was a hierarchy. So when we first started, we identified a leadership committee, if you will, and that was 10 individuals that were really strong in various areas, and we could communicate to them. And so of those 10, then they had a subset within their group. So they were each assigned to a special sector. Somebody was hospitality, somebody was managing headquarters, someone was managing the uniforms. And so under them, then they had captains. So under them, they had captains that had their own shifts and schedules. And then you had general volunteers. So, it wasn't as if I was directly talking to a general volunteer. I would communicate my information to one of the leads, and then the leads would disseminate the information because it was broken down into smaller groups.
Right.
So I think it was important for us to establish some sort of workflow in that way, because there's no way that I can have hundreds of people calling me and texting me and trying to reach out to me. That was never going to work.
It's not going to work, right? But your message has to be really clear, right? Because we know how messages get diluted, or words can be misconstrued one way or the other.
We've all played the phone tree game.
Yeah, and think about how catastrophic that could be if one word is messed up, or or time is wrong, right? Think about this. If, let's just say, the shifts are 3 hours, but you put a shift off by an hour wrong.
An hour, yeah.
That
matters.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. I mean, it affects anything. Parking, you check in, all of the things. So yes, we that's why the leaders that we chose, they had to be strong. They had to be professionals, in their day-to-day work. So we knew that we can rely on them on the details.
Yeah. And we talk about how important this stuff is, but, I tell students all the time, that nobody really cares about sports. Nobody cares. And we know this because on Super Bowl Sunday, other networks have ratings.
Right.
Nobody cares how many points somebody scored or who's going to make the playoffs.
Nobody's watching.
I mean, because in the scheme of life, it doesn't really mean anything, right?
It's minor in comparison.
It's minor.
Mm-hmm.
We care because it's our industry, and it's what
of course.
But I try and tell students to get out of that mindset and try and put it in perspective. Put it into perspective of the people that you're communicating with, so that there's that you could build that relationship, and so that you can see how it actually does matter and how it does relate to people. Now, and I bring this up because now we're going to start getting into some of the serious talk here, because you've said that sports saved your life.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
What do I mean by that? Well, in a nutshell, I lost both of my parents very early in life. So I lost my dad at the age of 12 and my mother at the age of 21. And she passed while I was in college. So, I'm a college student, just, I don't know nothing, right?
Right.
I'm trying to figure it all out. And so, unfortunately, I was working I was studying to be an athletic trainer, and I was a student trainer as well. And, the semester after she passed, I returned to school and I went right back to my responsibilities. But unfortunately, my supervisor wasn't very empathetic to the grief that I was experiencing and just the need for support and just to be loved on by my family, that a request home to see my family was denied. And when she denied that, that was the last day that I was a trainer, but that was also the day that I attempted to take my life, because I just felt like, what am I doing this for? I was barely hanging on as is. And, I hadn't graduated. I hadn't accomplished anything. I hadn't gotten married, none of the monumental things that would do in life, those things hadn't happened yet. So, I was just confused as to why am I even still here? But gratefully, my life was spared. I'm a woman of faith. And so I believe that, God knew that I had other things like the Super Bowl we just talked about on the horizon. But in that experience, I came through it. I ended up transferring schools back to my hometown so I could be closer to my family. But when I transferred, I had failed so many classes, just being there taking care of my mother, that I was encouraged to change my major from exercise science to sports administration. When I changed my major, I had to have an internship. And I won't go through the whole story of the internship process because I'll end up dating myself. But I ended up landing an internship with the Orange Bowl Committee, which is in Miami. And so I'm originally from Kentucky. So I just call it a blessing that, I would end up in sunny Florida, of course, right? And then Miami, Florida, where it's sunny, like, I don't know, 99% of the time. And so having that opportunity, getting down to Miami, and it was a double hosting year, which means it was an Orange Bowl game and a national championship. It literally saved my life. It literally gave me an opportunity to be in and around sports again, to be, in a sunny environment, to have some fun, and to be able to put the things that I was going through and the grief that I was feeling, to the side, so to speak, for a moment, and just kind of thrust myself into this experience. And so that obviously was the catalyst to my career.
Yeah.
And, obviously was the start of everything that I've been able to do. But I do believe that having something that brought me joy outside of, just the things that I had been through definitely was the saving grace for my life.
Yeah. And thank God for that. I think we get lost sometimes. Sports is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be, the place where we all come together.
Yes.
But in that, taking it just a step further, from, had a young man a couple weeks ago commit suicide.
Yeah.
Sad, tragic.
Yep.
And what we have is we've got these young people in college who don't have the skills, don't have the support systems, right? And when I say that sports doesn't matter, sometimes, like you said, in this person's life, that was the only thing that was keeping him around.
Right.
And, we've come a long way in how we deal with mental health and how we deal with these types of issues. Talk a little bit about what you're doing in terms of helping student athletes and the support systems for those that are affiliated with athletics.
Yeah. So I've known that I had some purpose work, right?
Right.
You don't just experience this for the heck of it.
Right.
I don't believe that I'm supposed to have, just live this and just go on. Like, I definitely know that I'm supposed to do something in this space. But for a while, I did not know what that was.
Right.
So I've always just worked in sports and events and the fun side, the stuff that, people clap for. the stuff that I don't care about. I'm just,
Right.
Gifted to
Right.
do it. It don't matter to me. But it was not until December of 2023. And as you mentioned, in my bio, I am an adjunct professor. And so December of 2023, as a faculty, I received an email of a young woman on the women's basketball team that had committed suicide. And when I received that email, I was completely distraught, to be honest. I was obviously we hear about it and we know that it happens, but when it's on your campus and
Right.
you get the notification, it's a different kind of feeling. And particularly, it took me back to my journey, my own story. I didn't know the young lady. I had one of her teammates in my class that was about as close as I was, but I knew that whatever she was going through, she felt that that was the only option. And that is what I could relate to.
Right.
And so in that, I said, all right, Kenisha, you've done a lot of great things in sports. It's been a fun ride, but how can we stop this? How can we put an end to this? Like, what can you do with your voice, your story, your overcoming to help this? And so there is where my program, the Game Changers United, was initially birthed. I knew I wanted to combine sports and combined my purpose in just being a light and being an inspiration in some sort of way. When the pandemic hit, and of course we didn't have any sports, I became a certified life coach to help just regular individuals with grief and loss.
Right.
But again, I did not know it was going to morph into this. I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. And so it's kind of ironic that all of the puzzle pieces start to come together when you find your purpose. But so I started the Game Changers United program, honestly, just for me to have a way to support colleges and universities with their initiatives and endeavors. Obviously the NCAA mandates, mental health awareness and, referring their student athletes to the campus counselors, or even if they have one in athletics. But what I believe and what I feel is that, some of these departments, they want to do more, but they just don't have the capacity to do
Right.
so. They don't have the time. If you've got a program with 400 and 500 athletes and it's only one, maybe two of you, it's not enough. And so that's where I want to support them. Like, hey, I want to use all these years in sports, all these years in events, and to help you create something on your campus so that a Kyron Lacey doesn't happen again.
Right.
So that they have a place where they know I can be vulnerable, I can be safe, I can share in my experiences with other students here and not feel alone, because that was my issue. I felt that I was the only person on
Right.
this green earth that was having an issue, which was not true, but you feel like that when you're in the middle of your trauma and your experience.
Yeah.
And so this is to help mitigate that and to help bring some sort of community on campus so that students don't feel alone as they're experiencing life issues.
Yeah, it's something that obviously that we really need, and it's long overdue. There's so many other issues that go into this because for whatever reason, each individual situation, either people they don't know how to ask for help, which is a problem.
Yep.
They don't know who to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what to ask for. And what I've found is that if you just speak up and say I need help, I think there's a ton of people that would say
that would
what can I do, but without knowing how to ask or knowing who to go to or whatever,
or feeling comfortable with that person, that individual.
Right. And it's that's also a problem too, whether it's a coach, whether it's a strength coach, whether it's an athletic trainer, whether it's a professor.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to be the blowback, right? And I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but you go to a coach and it says, well, okay, well, you've got these other issues. I'm moving on to somebody else.
Oh, that's a real thing. That's a real thing.
Or a professor say, well, it's not my problem.
Yeah, no, I hear that. That's part of the reason why we're doing this way, because they don't feel comfortable going to their coach.
Yeah.
They feel because again, I have student athletes that support me in this and are on the board so I can get their real life insight. And they say exactly that. they're reluctant to go to their coach because they think there's going to be ramifications. They
Yeah.
may understand, but then they may think that means they need time off, or they need, to pull back on their playing time. And it's like, that's not what I'm saying. I just want you to know me as a human being.
Right.
And I want you to know that my mom is sick, or my grandma just passed, know that there's other things that happen in my life other than me playing with this ball. And that's a very real thing.
And for the majority of these kids, they've got what, 3-4 seasons left.
Yeah.
Maybe this is their last week. Maybe this is their last week.
Right.
Ever. And there's the pressure that, whether it's the real pressure or the perceived pressure, because there's both. There's both. And not knowing how to deal with that.
Yep. Coupled
with the societal pressure, coupled with the academic pressure. There's a lot going on. And I think in that entire space, those pressures and things need to be looked at, and how we're approaching them.
Right.
From the academic piece, the whole idea of grades. I mean, you better get a good grade. I mean, you better hurry up and get a good grade on that assignment.
Stay eligible.
Right. You better hurry up. Right. And do whatever you got to do, which also leads to other behaviors.
Right.
And now all of a sudden it comes to a head. And now what are we going to do?
And now what?
Because now it's a problem. Right. It wasn't a problem before, because we didn't care about it.
Wasn't a problem until it was a problem.
Right. Because we didn't care about it.
Right.
But now we have to deal with it.
Now we have to do something.
As opposed to dealing with some of these other things before they become problems.
Exactly. Being proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love the work that you're doing. What can we do, or how can we help students to learn how to ask for help? Or, because again, even if let's just say you had a, I don't know, you had one person who, this is the person you go to for help. Ultimately, bureaucracies are bureaucracies, right? And we know what's going to happen, right? I mean, that's because that's what happens. I mean, that's just what happens,
right?
How do we? What advice can we give to students to say, okay, it's okay to go to somebody, and yes, there's got to be a comfortability there. But there also has to be somebody who knows and who can actually do something to help.
Yeah. So it actually, I'm going to flip it. It starts on the side of, I'm going to say the adult, because even though these are young adults, the side of the adult. Because again, what I have discovered just kind of working with my own student athletes, they're just big kids. Yeah. They're big, strong, tall, long wingspan, but they're kids at the end of the day, until 25, 26, and they graduate. Their kids. So it's on the adult in the situation to make themselves available, make themselves vulnerable. They need to share more of themselves in order for the athlete to feel comfortable. Because I can tell you all day that I have the credentials, and I mean, I'm referring to like the mental health counselor.
Right.
I can tell you all day that I have the credentials. Oh, I'm a licensed therapist, and I, went to this school and all of these things.
Right.
But if I can't see myself in you, or if I can't know that you're safe, I'm not going to come to you. Your credentials mean nothing to me as a 19-year-old. So it's on that licensed professional or the coach or whomever to say, hey, you know what? I know what you're going through because I experienced X, Y, and Z. One of my favorite phrases that I always share is that there is relatability in vulnerability. That if some of the coaches and the staff would take their mask off and show themselves and relate to them and, say, hey, look, I struggled with this too. Or my girlfriend broke up with me when I was an athlete too. The more that they share, I guarantee you the athletes will be like, oh, coach, I didn't know you went through that. Yeah. Oh, man, I didn't know you lost your mom too. When you can be vulnerable and you can share the human side of yourself and not just be seen as an authority, that will open up the door for them to be comfortable and say, hey, look, let me get your thoughts. Let me talk to you because you can relate to this.
Mhm.
And, I've seen that personally. The more I started sharing my story, the more people started coming and connecting. And so I just think the same thought applies to the administratives and the coaches.
Mhm.
It starts with them in order for the students to be more reluctant to come and speak.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I just want to make a couple points here. N Not everybody's trauma is the same, but
Right.
it's still trauma,
It's an experience. Yeah.
it's and I think a lot of times what happens is, and I've been guilty of this. Well, okay, but this person over here is going through much worse than you are. You need to get together, and that's really probably that's not the way that
Yeah. You can't do that.
you can't do that. And
Yeah.
um, each individual is an individual, and each individual
Right.
experience is their own individual experience, and we need to make sure that we approach it from that perspective.
Right.
And that I think is key. But I'm also glad that you said that it's up to us as the adults to move that forward and take that step.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been saying this for about a number of different issues, not just the mental health piece, but
Anything.
but the communication piece. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's up to us to. It's no longer just fall in line and get in line and do it because we
Right.
said that's
Those dog days are over.
gone. And it's up to us as the older generation, as the air fingers quote leaders, to reach out and say, okay, what's going on? This is how we need to do things. But please give me your feedback, or
Right.
tell me what you're feeling. Tell me what you're thinking about whatever it is, about the
Right.
process, about the the steps. What doesn't really matter, but we can't just expect things to be done. You better, and I'm knife handing you now. You
Right.
better hurry up. You better hurry up and do it, because it doesn't work anymore.
Right.
And I truly believe that if more people from the older generations were to just kind of take a step back,
Mm-hmm.
put that ego aside, and say, you
Uh-huh.
know what, let's reach out and find out what's actually going on. Let's see what they actually think. Let's get their
Uh-huh.
thoughts and opinions. I think things would move forward so much better, and everybody would be more productive.
Yeah. I mean, it's necessary. And the longer it takes for these schools to get on board, and these, coaches to open themselves up, unfortunately, you may still have situations like we've been seeing,
Yeah.
And so that's why my program is a little different, because again, I have this idea that they're kids, right? So you
Right.
have to create these environments that are comfortable for them. What does a big kid want to do? They play games, Uno and dominoes, and we'll have a game night, or we'll just sit up and have a movie night. You have to create the environment that is welcoming for them to want to come,
Right.
and then B, actually want to have the conversation. So it requires effort. You just can't throw something out there and say, oh, y'all come to group circle. They're not doing that.
Exactly.
So it requires some strategy. And that's why I'm taking the burden off of these athletic departments to say, hey, I have figured it out. I know what they need. So allow us to bring it in and implement it on your campus so that it can be something that is long-term.
Right.
Yeah.
And just so everybody understands, this isn't just a Division I major college problem. This is in every
It's top to bottom.
college. It's every college problem.
Yeah.
Every college.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go to a college, or university, or a place of higher education and not find somebody who is in this position.
Right.
Because it's just a microcosm of society. Go down
Right.
the road. It's probably going on in your workplace that you don't know.
Oh yeah. 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 We're
and-
just specifically relating
Right.
to, sports and athletics, but
Right.
this is everywhere.
And,
we're in different times now.
So let's get together.
Yeah, for sure.
So talking about resilience, and how can we build that resilience to because it's not like, again, you can't just wake up and say, okay, today's better. I'm getting over it today, and I'm going to get it done. How do we build resilience in in young people when they're going through whatever it is. It could be something small, it could be something big.
Yeah.
I mean, because ultimately, we have to move forward. We have to get them to understand that you got to move forward.
Yeah. I think it goes back to what we like to say, in the speaking world, what's your why? Why are you doing the things that you do? Because that's going to be the thing that helps you to get out of bed, not necessarily the absolute, but if you have something bigger than yourself, you have a goal, or you have someone that is bigger than you, should not be attached to like anything monetary. But if you have a reason that you want to keep getting up, that is something that you have to reflect on when those tough times come. And so, I've obviously have tried different things and personal endeavors and all of the things, and some have been successful and some haven't. But I think the resilience of keeping going when the times get tough and when you're having setbacks and things aren't working out for you, you have to remember what got you started in the first place, because it's not going to be smooth sailing in really anything. So you have to remember, well, why did I start? Why did I go back to school? Why did I change careers? Why did I, move to this city? You have to remember that part of the thing when adversity strikes. And so, it may not be something that you overcome instantly or, within a day or what have you, but it gives you something to hold on to. It gives you something to remember in those moments as you're still trying to pull yourself, out of that space, and get back to, who you are. So I just think it's important to have a why, and be for real, understand that if it's bigger than you, you're more inclined to keep going because somebody or something is dependent on your resiliency.
Yeah. And I think the piece that I struggle with is, and I feel like my grandfather, young people these days, these kids these days. But my guess is, I was there too, is that they don't really know who they are. They don't spend that time thinking about that why until later in life, or until there's a problem. And and that just makes it so much harder. Just, but you got to have it. And maybe that's something that we as a society needs to do a better job of helping the younger generations to start thinking about that, to start thinking about who they are and what their core values are and what gets them going, what excites them, what are they,
Yeah, you have to have an identity and something beyond this.
Yeah. I call it the innards, my innards. I mean, I know when I'm excited, right? I mean, and I know what it is, and I know that feeling. I feel it throughout.
Right.
And you got to they got to figure that out. I think if they figure it out when they're younger, and again, things may change as you get older, but if you figure it out when you're younger, how much better is life going to be for you?
Right. If we could start earlier, there's some thoughts of that, this pathway would be a little more simpler. May not be as rocky as many of us have experienced, but it's all trial and error. We even as a child, you try 4 and 5 different sports until you find your favorite one, and then you keep on going with that till you're ready to get better, and do it better. So again, it kind of goes back to the parents. It kind of goes back to, your authority figures and your leaders, to help mold and shape and kind of instill that early, so that when you get down the road and life really, rubber meets the road, as they say, you have something to pull on. But even if you don't, that's why persons like myself and, other people in these spaces are trying to help you to, all right, well, if you didn't get it before, you can get it now, because you still have the rest of your life to live. And these are going to be those skills that you're going to need, because life is going to continue to meet you and meet you well. And if you're not ready, it could be a setback that you're not prepared for.
Yeah, but and that's the other thing that they have to understand.
Yeah.
It's something is going to happen to them in their life.
It's going to happen.
That they're not going to be prepared for.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, that's called life. It's what
Yep.
happens. But like you said, having that good grounding, having that core, for I don't want to speak for you, but for people like you and me who come from the faith background,
Yeah.
we have that to as our. I mean, for
Absolutely.
me, it's an anchor.
Yeah.
And and I'm not saying people have to do that. I mean, it's up. I mean,
Yeah, of course.
But,
Well, if you
but
come
have
talk to me though, I'm gonna share it with.
right.
Oh, I know you go talk to somebody else, but yeah,
you understand what I'm saying here.
of course,
You've got to have it. You got to have some anchor.
Something bigger.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, well, Kenisha, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I really do appreciate it. Where can people, work with you or find out what you're doing to get involved? All the good stuff that you're doing. I mean, you're coaching, helping with what's going on college campuses. Where can they find you?
Yeah. So, you can find me personally. I'm on Instagram at Kenisha Nichelle, N as in Nancy Nichelle. LinkedIn is a good place too. I give a lot of good tips and information about the Game Changers United program, as well as tips and tools for students and student athletes. So Kenisha Brown-Alexander on LinkedIn, and then Game Changers United. So GameChangersUnited.com, Game Changers United on Instagram as well. So yeah, if anybody's interested in connecting and want to learn more or how you could get Game Changers United on your campus, please let's connect, because at the end of the day, this is about these students. We're just trying to save a life and try to make sure that they successfully get through their collegiate career.
Absolutely. And they have skills to move forward as they get older as well. I mean, it's
right.
It's this is a long-term endeavor here.
For sure.
Well, again, thanks so much. We'll put those links in the show notes. And again, Kenisha, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing what you're doing. You're doing the work.
Thank you.
And anything I can do for you in the future, you just let me know.
I appreciate it, Tim. Thank you so much.
Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to get your free ebook, Top 21 Challenges for Public Speakers and How to Overcome Them. You can also register for the Forming for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care.